Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you guys for joining us today for our weekly webinar. My name is Victor Verba, and I'm a systems engineer over here at Variphy. Today, I will be your host for this webinar, and I am joined by my friend Mike Stratton, aka Magic Mike, another systems engineer over here at Variphy. So for today's webinar, Mike's going to be walking us through how we can upgrade MySQL 5.5 or 5.6 to MySQL version 8. So we're going to go ahead and start off with a quick overview of what our company does and what we do. We'll jump into a live demonstration, and Mike's going to take us through the upgrade process. We'll pause for some Q&A and get some questions answered. During the demo, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them in the Q&A panel on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. That's the panel that we'll be monitoring for any type of questions. Then after Q&A, we'll reward one lucky attendee a $50 Amazon gift card, so make sure that you guys hang around to see if you have won. Just a quick overview of Variphy. We are the preferred analytics and management solution for Cisco collaboration. We provide industry-leading CDR, UCCX, and you'll notice this guy off over here on the right. New to our reporting analytics is our Cube reporting. If you have any interest in Cube analytics, feel free to ping me in the bottom right-hand QA channel or reach out to your account manager. We can get you some additional information. By the way, that Cube version is now GA, so it is available. We also do customizable dashboards, widgets, remote phone control, and change management. But for today's demonstration, we're going to be focusing on upgrading MySQL. And again, if you have any questions on any of the other features, feel free to hit me up in the QA panel on the bottom right-hand corner. One more thing before we kick things off. For those of you guys looking for a more hands-off experience, Variphy does offer a managed consulting service. This is a service that provides you a dedicated system engineer to do all the heavy lifting, giving you and your users a completely hands-off experience. We are basically an extension of your organization. Upgrades, one-on-one training, report and dashboard building, your ninja would have you covered. You have a dedicated ninja that is engaged with you and your team on a one-on-one basis to provide additional consulting, unassisted reporting, dashboard configuration, system monitoring. So the only thing that you'll have to do is call us and request a report or a dashboard, and we'll go ahead and get that taken care of for you. If you want any additional information on our NCS services, feel free to reach out to your account manager, and we'll be happy to see if NCS is right for you. So with all that said, Mike, tell us a little bit about why we want to upgrade MySQL.
Perfect. All right, thank you, sir. Let me
I'll
wait for you to pass.
Here, buddy.
All right, here we go.
Into the wild.
Jump into another Google Slides document. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Vic. The purpose of today's webinar is to demonstrate some methods for upgrading MySQL from version 5.5 or 5.6 to version 8. This webinar is kind of geared towards our users who have MySQL deployed in a Windows environment. However, if you're running Linux, the upgrade process is pretty much the same. If you have our OVA deployed, we suggest skipping the upgrade or suggest skipping the in-place MySQL upgrade. And if you want or need to be at the latest version, I would deploy the latest copy of our OVA and then migrate your system from the older server to the new server. That way you're not just getting the latest MySQL, but you're getting the latest of everything. So, all right, so you have Windows deployed, you have MySQL 5.6 or 5.5 installed. The first question is, why do I need to upgrade? Well, the answer is, this is why. MySQL 5.5 met its end of life December 3rd of 2018. 5.6 met its end of life February 5th of this year. So they are no longer supported. So how can you tell what version you have, or how can I tell what version I have? There's a couple different ways. So if you're running Windows, you can go to apps and features, also, add and remove programs, search for MySQL in the list of applications, and you'll see here, I have MySQL Server 5.5 installed. If I click on it, it'll show you the specific version. So I have 5.5 or 5.5.9 installed. Another way, you can check your folders. So if I go to File Explorer, bring it over, on my C drive, let's go to, you can go a couple different places you can go. If you go to the Program Files folder, there's a separate folder for MySQL. If you go there, you'll see a folder for each version of MySQL installed. So we're here. I have MySQL Server version 5.5 installed. If I go back, I can also check the program data folder for the MySQL folder, and you'll see that I have 5.5 installed. And actually, that we can get rid of for now. So I have, so 5.5 server installed. And then another way is if you go to the Windows Services app, you can locate that MySQL service, right click, go to properties, and you'll see here in the path to the executable, same thing. You're looking at the folder, but it'll say, MySQL Server version 5.5 or whatever version's installed. If you're running Linux, there's a couple different ways. Let me get my server up here. So if you're running Linux, there's a couple different ways. From the command line, type MySQL space -V. The capital V is important. That command will just query the MySQL version. You don't need to be logged into MySQL. So you'll see here, I'm running MySQL version 8.0.22 on my lab. Another way, when you log into MySQL, it'll also tell you the version. So MySQL. When I log in, you'll see right here at this row, it shows me that the server version is 8.0.22. All right, moving on. Before you upgrade, a couple of things you need to know before you upgrade. Most important, make a backup or do a backup, perform a backup, take a backup, run a backup, whatever you call it. Make sure you have something to fall back on in case something should go wrong. Migrating or upgrading, migrating MySQL is pretty straightforward. It's easy. There's, it's not that hard. But in case something does go wrong, you are working with your data. You don't want to lose that database. So definitely have some sort of backup. The best backup method I can recommend, most of these servers that we're working with are virtual. So, if you can, take a snapshot. If you can't take a snapshot, I would say there's two other ways. MySQL dump or MySQL Workbench. As part of the upgrade process, you're going to need to make a dump of your database or databases either way. So you can use MySQL dump through like a command line interface, or if you install MySQL Workbench on like a Windows machine, you can use MySQL Workbench to do the same thing as MySQL dump to export your data. All right, so let's get this out of the way, and now move forward. So what we're going to do for the first step is we kind of need to know some additional information. So let me jump into my lab here and jump back into the VPN. So a couple things we need to know prior to starting the upgrade besides the version of MySQL. In the software, in our software, go under the system, go to the database server settings, and then edit your database server. We need to know a couple things. Which port we're using to communicate with SQL Server. The default port for MySQL is port 3306. And we'll also need, we'll also need the login and password. So here I'm using root. You should know this password. If you don't, there are ways to reset it. We'll also need to know the database name. Back into my VPN. And then under the settings, under clusters, go to CUCM. And you'll see here for each of your clusters, it'll tell you which database server you're connected to for that cluster. And then it'll also show you the name of the server. So we have the port, which is 3306. We have the login and password to the root account. And we also have the database name. One other thing to consider is how much space do you have on the server? If you're running a live system with a very large database, we are making a backup of the database, and then we are importing it into the new version of MySQL. So you're going to need some space to back up your database, and also then once you import that database, you're essentially making a copy of that database. So you'll have two copies of the same database running side by side at the same time. So you definitely want to have enough space for two databases, and then for that backup. All right. So once you have all the information you need to know, the next step is to download the MySQL installer. So a quick Google search, or if you just go to the MySQL website, here it's dev.mysql.com/download/MySQL. You'll see you'll come to this banner here that says MySQL installer for Windows. Click on the banner. It'll take you to the download page. You want to download. I would download the full installer, not the web-based one. download it. And then the last step is to just, you can skip the login or sign up and just click on no thanks, just start my download. So to save time, I already have that ready to go. And here is the installer. We can go ahead and get that running. While this is unpacking and getting ready to run, now would be a good time to stop the verify service, as we don't want the system inserting any additional data while after the backup has been made. So we'll go ahead, go back into the services, search for the verify service, go ahead, right click and stop the service. All right, we are stopped. And here's the MySQL installer. So to start the installation process, so basically what we're going to do is install MySQL version 8 and have it run side by side with the version 5. We'll also install MySQL Workbench, and then at that point we'll use MySQL Workbench to make a data dump or a backup of the database that sits on the version 5.5 server, and then we'll also use Workbench to import that database into the version 8. And then once we're done, we can go ahead and uninstall the version 5. So here in the installer, I'm going to select MySQL Server 8. This is the latest version, 8.0.26. So go ahead, add that to the list of products to be installed. And then under applications, I want to install MySQL Workbench. Now, this color, this link is orange, and as you hover over it, it just says there may be some problems connecting to the existing 5.59 version. So if we want to install an earlier version of Workbench, click on the edit button up here, change the maturity from current bundle to other release, and filter. And you'll see here, not only can we install the latest version of MySQL 8, but you can go install previous versions of 8, 5.7, and 5.6. Same thing with Workbench. So if we want to install an earlier version of Workbench, we can do so here. I'll go ahead with 8.0.22 and add it to the list of products to be installed. So once we have those two products selected, go ahead and click next, and then execute, and just kind of follow the bouncing ball all the way through. All right, next. So we've got MySQL Server 8 ready to go, and Workbench as well. So one thing worth pointing out with the method that we're using, if you go back to the database menu in Verify, let me see if I can get back there with the server stuff. It probably won't let me. No, it won't let me. In the database settings, the port 3306 is in use, or is being used by the 5.5 instance of MySQL. When you install the new instance, it is going to require a new port number. So usually what we do is we just increment up by 1, and then we'll use port 3307. If you needed to use port 3306 after the install, you can go back to the INI file with MySQL and just change the port number. Or another method that's not the greatest to use, you can go ahead and install Workbench first, and then export your database. Once you have the database exported, you can uninstall the 5.5 or the earlier version of MySQL, and then install 8. And then with the previous version installed, you can go ahead and then reuse that same port. The only downside to that is that once you uninstall the old version of MySQL, that database is kind of left or kind of orphaned. So if something goes wrong, if you have to need to re-export your database, you're kind of stuck, and you have to go back and then restore from your snapshot or from whatever backup you had. So I don't suggest that method. I would rather just use the second port. So all right, we are good. MySQL server is ready, done, and Workbench is ready. So go ahead and next, and then we start the configuration process. So as I said, there's that port. So 3306 is in use by MySQL, the current version, which is 5.59. We can just change it, port 3307. If it's happy, we'll change the config type to server computer because we have several applications running on this. And then next, for the authentication method, we're going to use the legacy authentication method. And next, and this is where we set up the password for the root accounts. You can, if you change it or if you do something other than your current root password, is just make sure you remember what you set it to. So we have our root account, and then we'll next. And we do want the MySQL to install as a service. It's using the standard system account. That's it. So we'll go ahead and apply the configuration. All right, we are finished. Done, and we will launch Workbench. So you'll see, if I go back into my Windows Services application, I have the old 5.5, and I also have the now I have the version 8 MySQL running. So now we're running essentially 2 versions of MySQL side by side. Okay, so in Workbench, you won't have these 2 connections. You may have to create yours from scratch. This one here is pointing towards my 5.5 database because it's pointing towards port 3306. This one here is pointing towards the new server, or the new instance, which is version 8 at 3307. So with both versions of MySQL running and Workbench up and installed, the next step then is going to be to work on migrating the database from the old version to the new version. So we'll go ahead and we'll connect to the new version, or I'm sorry, to the old version. Here is you see our R1 schema here, Chicago CDR. And going back to the conversation about disk space, if you want to see how much space your database is taking up, once you're in Workbench, or even if you're in the command line interface, if you're just querying MySQL, there are queries out there you can run against your to see how much space is taking up. So my Chicago CDR database is only taking up 32 meg in space. It's not a live system, not a big database, but it's just something that we can play around with. So I don't need that much space, but again, in a live environment, do check to see if you have enough disk space to migrate the database and essentially make a copy of this database. So all right, so there's 2 ways to migrate the database. The way that I'm going to use is by going to Server in Workbench and then going to Data Export. There is a migration wizard, although I've run into some issues with this wizard with larger databases, as it seems like the migration wizard has a limit as to how much memory it can use. So for larger databases, I would definitely go the data export route. So go to Server, Data Export, and then we have our 2 schemas to select from. I'm going to export my Chicago schema. You can pick and choose which objects you want. We want everything. We do want to select dump data and make sure dump structure and data is selected. And then just pick your path. So I'm not going to go to the standard one. I'm going to go to the folder I have on my desktop here. Chicago. Give that file a name. There's the path, the name, and that is it. So we'll go ahead and start the export. It's telling me that the version is a mismatch. I'm okay with that. Let's go ahead, and you see here. Now this ran really quick. In a live environment with a much larger database, this won't run that quick. Just make sure that you may need some time, set some time aside to let this run. And you can see right here, the data export is essentially just running MySQL dump. It puts in all the parameters for you. That way you're not worried about Googling the which parameters to use. It does all the work for you. So database is exported. I can see here on my desktop, I have here's my folder, and there's my backup or my data export. So we're all set. We're pretty much done with the version 5 system. We can go back in, go to the version 8. And from the version 8, you can see there's nothing here. We're going to go under server, go to data import, and we're going to change our folder to the one on my desktop. SQL. Load the contents. There's my schema. And because we don't have a database, we need to enter in the new database name, which is going to be the same database name. So Chicago CDR. Click OK. And then start the import. So again, same thing as the data import, the manual process. We're just running MySQL.exe. It's creating the schema. Then it inserts all the data, and we're done. So again, live system. This would take a lot longer, but in this environment, we have a very small database. It only takes a few seconds. So, and that's it. We can refresh the schema list, and you can see we have our Chicago CDR database here. If we want to check to make sure that the data came across, we can start a new query. Chicago CDR. So we can select the database name here, and then just try to select some call records. select the top 10 records from the main call detail record table. There we go. So we have data. We can query it. I'm confident that the database was migrated. So we're all set. Last step then is to jump back into Variphy. So let me get back into there. There we go. I already, in this case, I already restarted the service, but you would come in here, restart the Variphy Insight service, sign in. And because our cluster is still looking at the old instance, so we can come in, go to our database server, and you have two options. If you still have clusters that need to use the old database server, you can click add and add new entry. Or if you have, if you've migrated everything already over, click the edit button, come in here, change your port to the new port. If you've changed your root password, I did not, but if you do, you can come in here and edit or update your password and click save. I believe once it saves, it automatically updates the cluster. I could be wrong though. I've seen some instances where it drops it, but we're still enabled. Just to be sure, if you want to make sure that everything comes and takes effect, you can restart the service. Give it a second. A few seconds.
While we're waiting for that guy to come back up, Mike, let's
Yes.
go ahead. We can field a couple of questions we had. One of the questions was the Variphy upgrade would not upgrade MySQL. So I think they're asking if just upgrading the Variphy to the latest and greatest would update MySQL. So let's see. Will the upgrade download this, or do you have to do a new OVA? Was the question. So, my response to that is the Variphy upgrade does not upgrade MySQL. You do not need an OVA, so you do not have to load the OVA. That is absolutely an option. If you're on an older version of Windows and you want to try to get off of it, the OVA is a great way to be able to get off of an old version of Windows, but also get you up to the latest and greatest MySQL. But Mike, as you're demonstrating here, you don't have to go to the new OVA. You can do a standalone upgrade of MySQL as well.
That's correct.
And then there you go. It looks like you're back up and running. I'll shut up now.
No, are there any other questions? I mean, I'm pretty much done. But we are back in. We do want to make sure that the cluster is active. It's enabled, so we're good. It can talk to the database. Everything should be happy. If you want to check the processing logs, definitely make sure that everything's processing. Jump up here, check CDR processing, top log. In the current versions, check the CDR processing log. Look for any errors. But here, it would be inserting in a live system. You would see data being inserted. So yeah, that's pretty much it. We've migrated to the new version 8 database. The last step really would be to just come in and then uninstall the old version of MySQL. So go into apps and features. If you have multiple databases, you will need to do run multiple exports, run multiple imports. If you change your database names or change any passwords, make sure all those are all done. And then once you're confident that everything is working, come in and just go ahead and uninstall the old version of MySQL. So, and then everything's popping up on my other window. That's it. We're all set. So, the upgrade process is pretty simple. It's more for larger systems when you're not running a lab system. You're going to spend more time just waiting for things to import and export than you are actually doing anything active within the database or within the software. So it's just a matter of time. And I guess the last thing is that's some of our earlier customers pre our Linux OVA may still be running MySQL 5 or 5.5 or 5.6. So we will be reaching out to you the CA to check to make sure that you are still running. If you are running 5.5 or 5.6, then we will help schedule an upgrade to help you upgrade and get off of the old versions of MySQL. So at that point, I think Vic, it's back to you.
Excellent. Yep. Let me go ahead and steal the ball back here.
Go ahead.
go ahead and get out of the wild. So a couple of questions. I think we pretty much fielded these. This is the one we were talking about, the upgrade. And Mike, you just kind of answered this one. If you downloaded the OVA in the past year or so, do I need to upgrade MySQL? The answer is no. You're going to be on version 5.7. 5.7 is still live and well, so there is no need to upgrade. You could always go ahead and follow this process to go to upgrade to MySQL version 8. There are also some with a 5.7 to 8.0. There is an installer, although my personal preference is to use the method that Mike had demonstrated here today. It's a tried and true method through the various versions of MySQL. And if you have not done so yet, please make sure you pop over to verify.com and sign into Planet Verify. Planet Verify is our new user community, giving you the ability to connect with your peers and other Verify users, expand your knowledge, collaborate on different topics, see what we're drinking this week. Join the Cantina, earn some points and some rewards. So if you have not already done so, make sure you join our user community. A lot of great people and a lot of great information out there. So thank you for everybody who has already joined and contributed. And for those that have not, we hope to see you guys out there. And that is planet.verify.com to get you in there. And your login will be the same login that you use at verify.com. If you have any questions or any trouble getting into Planet.Verify, feel free to reach out to your account manager and we'll make sure that we get you in there. And today's winner is Lakeisha Crawford. Lakeisha, congratulations. We'll go ahead and have your account manager reach out to you. Congratulations on your $50 Amazon gift card, and thanks for coming and joining us today. And last but not least, make sure you register for our upcoming webinar where we're going to go ahead and discuss Cisco cause codes. That's going to be presented by one of our SEs over here, Jim Schultens, and the other guy is Matt Sykes, aka Matty Ice. So make sure you register for our September 29th webinar on Cisco cause codes. And I think I got that date wrong. That's not September 29th, but I'll make sure we fix that. Just pop over to verify.com/webinars and make sure you register for our Cisco cause codes. So with that, I appreciate everybody hanging out with us today. I hope we were able to shed a little bit of light on how to upgrade MySQL to version 8. And if you have any questions, feel free to hit us up, support@verify.com. Appreciate your time today, guys. Thank you.